Okay, let's all take a deep breath before we jump into this really big chapter. There are a lot of new characters showing up, and some interesting plans and betrayals are discussed within the Hylia family. It's kind of expected of such a bloodthirsty set of individuals though, if you ask me. In the previous chapter, we were in a bit of a mess involving a room that could make people disappear, so that's where we pick up again. Let's dive in. The side text for this chapter called Plan tells us the sprung trap, offense and defense from the door, as a reminder of what kind of problem Kenny and Hinrig have gotten themselves into. Stalling for time, the man, still pretending to be frail and innocent, says he needs to use the bathroom before he can exit the room. Hinrig, the smart guy that he is, stands there with his throwing knives at the ready if he makes any sudden attack on them. With a close-up, we see his irritation that he even tells the guy, "I don't care if you piss yourself, just get over here." Quite literally with knives out. As the man still stalls, complaining that they're troublesome, even going as far as saying who knows what might happen, Hinrig has no more patience. He throws a knife, easily hitting the man in the leg. At that, he lets out a loud scream of pain. Even though the old man puts on a good show, screaming and writhing in pain, Hinrig watches carefully and notices there's not even any blood coming from the wound. Getting more ticked off, Hinrig threatens to show him real pain when he finds this old man's real body. The liar looks pensive at that and admits he was a con man who would pretend to get injured to get money out of people. And he could get more money the more honest people were. He continues with how the times have changed, and Hinrig quite frankly doesn't care about this old man's sentimentality for the past. Who could blame him? He's there for Morena and her crew, and instead he's got to deal with this whiny old man who won't tell him anything of value. When he gets straight to the point, wanting to know where this old guy and the corporal's bodies are, the body suddenly starts disappearing like smoke. All that's left is the knife that hit him in the leg. Two members standing guard outside look in to see the old man evaporate, shocked that someone might have the same kind of power as the boss. Kenny turns to Hinrig, suggesting they leave this problem for the troop, since they offered to take care of them and their violent behavior. Besides, Hinrig already made a deal with Hisoka, so all that's left is to get rid of Hylia, which the spiders are more than willing to do. As they're discussing this though, one of the people nearby decides he needs to go get his shiv, inside the room where a man and corporal just disappeared. Great idea. As expected, he was gone the moment he stepped foot in the room, and it wasn't enough that Hinrig shouted for him to not go in. The small guy's name turns out to be Tashi, and the two men as well as Hinrig are all disappointed that he was sucked into the portal leading to who knows where. With that in mind, it works differently to the portals that Luini could create by leaving marks for spots he wanted to jump to and from. It's more a place that you need to draw people into and then bring them right where you want them, like Hylia's base. Kenny points this out for Hinrig, who thought Luini was the cause of this event. He even explains that Luini was killed by Nobunaga, so it's definitely someone else's ability. It may even be Vaconte, who admitted he could use a door ability that required drawing people inside. But before we get into more about the Hylia issues, don't forget to subscribe with notifications on and smash that like button to avoid being attacked by a NEN beast. Either way, Hinrig can't believe the troop killed Luini so easily, and Kenny says there's no way it's him since the guy's head and body are still at the Cha-R office. That aside, they get back to the topic of the pesky Hylia family and wanting the spiders to deal with them. Kenny believes since it was so easy to take down a man like Luini, this door issue could become an easy problem for them to solve as well. As Kenny leaves, likely to let them know the situation, Hinrig thinks to himself that he should also look around. Anyway, we jump to the place where the small dude named Tashi had gone in to get his weapon. All he has is a door in front of him, not realizing he's been brought elsewhere. Unfortunately for him, he doesn't have the chance to take in his surroundings or react, and his neck is sliced by Belay, who is waiting behind him with a knowing smile. Grabbing him roughly by the shirt after cutting his neck, he throws him aside like junk. Grinning more widely now, Belay announces that he's finally reached level 21, which means he can receive a NEN category. The other members in the room give their congrats, not even bothered by the corpse on the floor. These people are ruthless. Yeesh. Matt Vare, who previously wanted to be an emitter, found out he's a transmuter from the water test. Also, seeing as he wasn't level 21 before, this must mean he killed someone to have leveled up. Could that person have been the missing corporal who went inside the room first? Your guess is as good as mine, but it would definitely make sense with the carnage we see next. Back to the test though, Matt Vare hands the glass with water to Belay, who hopes and chants, "Come on a mission, come on a mission." Too bad for him, he gets Conjurer instead. Gelato watches as he complains about that reveal, and she's extremely envious of it. She also points out that it seems like a lot of left-handed people, at least in the Hylia, have turned out Conjurers. Here comes the name reveal for a whole lot more Hylia members, so brace yourselves. First, we have an emitter named Torbelm, who works as an assassin and smuggler. He picks up poor dead Tashi like garbage and even straight up calls him trash, announcing this is the last of the trash. Torbelm also tells a girl with pigtails that Visconti has connected this room to the disposal plant. At that, she turns around to another woman named Chiffon, asking her for help. Smiling kindly, he tells the two, Chiffon Toto and Mont Blanc Toto, that they too will be level 21 soon. It's revealed that Chiffon is a seamstress, as we see her pulling the clothes from Tashi, while Mont Blanc is a corpse disposal worker, wielding what looks like a cleaver, ready to cut off his limbs. Behind them both is a ton of neatly hung up clothing, likely from mafia members they killed, and body parts wrapped in garbage bags. We move on then to a dark hallway as Torbelm waves goodbye to the two girls. Morena is shown to be having a meeting with some members, worried that Sereidnik might be onto them and their goals. If you recall, previously the 4th Prince Sereidnik was learning NEN, and when he returned to his room there was a dismembered body left for him. Because of that, he asked the lower tier soldiers to search for Morena and her hideout. Back to Morena, she thought she had more time before they'd be found out, but with Cha-R, Shiyu, and now the spiders looking for them, they probably should think about leaving the ship altogether. That's what I would do. She also mentions someone named Gyatom and having been in contact with them, meaning she has spies of her own, out making sure they can stay hidden longer. Either way, with the growing threat of being found, Morena decides it's time they try to get one of Sereidnik's people on their side. To do that, she asks them to go with Dogman and capture a guard. Matver doesn't want to have to change clothes, so a new character named Sodom offers to go instead. Not only is Sodom a level 31 manipulator, but he's also an assassin and an underworld doctor. Considering most of the High Elite members' levels we've seen so far have been in the 20s, we can assume this means he's pretty strong. Morena explains her plan. Since Sereidnik will want to kill her himself, they need a way to watch him and anticipate his next move beforehand. The best way to do that would be using contagion on a soldier of his, so they can keep an eye on the 4th Prince. She then gives them a list of eligible people to kidnap and orders them to bring whichever they find to Door C, seeing as Room 3101's passageway is no good anymore. She also orders 2 more members to keep guard at the door in case any of the prince's bodyguards show up so they can be lured in and killed. The 2 men are an enhancer/garbage man named Oraruji and a corrupt lawyer and conjurer named Yokotani. Oraruji makes a comment about turning the soldiers away on legal grounds, but Yokotani shuts it down quickly. But if that isn't enough, here's 2 more members of High Elite. No, really. Morena orders Notre and Soufflé to return to room 3131 and report on what's going on with room 3101 from there. It's revealed that Notre is a conjurer and plumber, while Soufflé is a hacker transmuter. I don't know about you, but all these French food names are really making me hungry. Funny thing though, Soufflé seems really bad at directions, and Notre has to remind them how to get back to room 3101 multiple times. After it's repeated, Soufflé still doesn't follow and just decides to rely on their partner. At that, he says, "What would you do without me?" Is this possibly foreshadowing for Soufflé getting lost if Notre is ever killed or captured? Maybe. Morena doesn't react to their conversation and instead calls for Dogman. She tells him he has the most important mission of all, finding a guard. The man, or Canine, admits he would need more levels to be successful with that task, even though he's revealed as a level 36 enhancer already. It's not clear whether that dog face is his actual face or just a mask he wears to hide his identity, or possibly for intimidation. Morena agrees with him that he should be at least level 50 before doing that mission, so she assigns him to the disposal plant instead. Getting back to Hinrig and his camera kitty, it's still in the same spot, recording as it was told to. He goes through the footage, but doesn't seem impressed with what he finds there. He probably wasn't able to record that woman who slipped away like he wanted. Next, we get an exciting shot of Sereidnik's guards rushing into a room, hoping to capture Morena and High Elite members. But the area is empty, save for a dead body from the Cha-R family. The guard in charge says they can use that as an excuse for having rushed into the room the way they did, claiming a High Elite member was resisting arrest and escaped. Another soldier points out that they're registered as civilians, so they can't treat them as gang members. But the head guard reminds him that this room is labeled as a gang office, so it's still fine to treat it as a gang-related offense. What's more, if this appears to the public as an act of rebellion instead of a civilian from the mafia being murdered by another family, it would cause a lot of chaos. The same chaos that Morena likely wants to create. Continuing on, he explains that they need to find and arrest her before any of that happens, and so that she can't cause any more trouble for the 4th Prince. Finally, he tells them Tier 3 should be easier to clean up now that Cha-R and Shiyu are working together, but they also don't want to grab the attention of the police or royal guards with these searches. They need to stick to smaller firearms for that reason. At that, a lower-level guard speaks up. He thinks it would be a good idea to find ways to counter NEN abilities and users, since more and more people are gaining those powers in the High Elite family. Not that he knows that, or does he? Unfortunately, the corporal doesn't even know what NEN is. The younger man just describes it as a special power that's spreading like a virus in Tier 1, which isn't quite accurate, but close enough. Getting more riled up, he says that NEN is likely why the prince hasn't dealt with the problem himself, and they need to be ready to take care of it when the time comes. Annoyed, the corporal asks where he heard all this stuff, since he's just a low-level second-class private. Without hesitating, he says it's Volkson, someone we have yet to meet, a member of the Royal Living Quarters Guard Association. As if we didn't have enough names to remember before, here's another. Anyway, with the source revealed, the older man says he'll be requesting for Volkson to be reassigned. Meanwhile, our second-class private named Otoshin gets the chewing out of his life for calling the fourth prince an overly friendly nickname. He also threatens to put him on the front line so he can deal with the NEN users that he's so worried about. Talk about rough. Another guard tells Otoshin he's an idiot for getting Volk mixed up in this too. It's clear the two are involved in some kind of plan, and getting Volkson reassigned was part of it, since Otoshin comes right out and says it worked. Not only that, but he's assuming Morena has something up her sleeve, seeing as she provoked Sereidnik on purpose. His colleague just teases him about having provoked the corporal, with no chance of winning that battle. Again, the corporal singles Otoshin out for speaking too much, and likely also using the nickname for the prince again. Behind him, more guards discuss how it'll be sad when they can't enjoy this kind of banter and shouting anymore. The reason they say this is because of recent events and how it's taken so long to find victims' bodies, meaning people are either purposely not reporting them or just ignoring them. Most of the conversation that follows is based on ideas of what they think is going on and how things could go if nothing is changed, such as inspections assuming bodies are mafia members when they could be civilian casualties. He also questions whether the Hunter Association would get involved, and if they did, they could reveal any tampering that has been done through the coroner and police working together. And if that happened, the Hunters would no longer trust the Kakin Empire, and they might take things into their own hands. Will we be seeing Kurapika soon then? We can hope. The female guard doesn't agree though. She thinks the mafia dispute isn't what they're there for, and instead all they want is to guard the princes. The man continues, saying that the Hunters performing bodyguard duty is an issue. Not only that, but they probably didn't know about the seed urn ceremony that provided guardian beasts, the same way the guards didn't. He worries that Hunters might try to kill the princes that have any blood relations to the mafia, just to ensure their own princes are safe. And the woman agrees that the Justice Ministry would be fine with that, since they don't want any mafia anyway. Similarly, the first prince would be happy with that result as well, considering he's the deputy military advisor of the Royal Army. But that's not the biggest problem. The guard worries that a war could break out between the Kakin Empire and the mafia, if the Justice Department, the Army, and the Hunters are coming. If that isn't bad enough, he reminds us that High Li are focused on destroying the balance above everything else, which is why they kill without worrying about consequences and are also registered as civilians. They continue the conversation, still afraid of what could happen, especially since High Li inciting an uprising would have the royal guards and families overrun by the lower classes who would far outnumber them. But who cares about that? Private Otoshin is annoyed that they've been talking so much, and the corporal hasn't told them to be quiet. Corporal Gipper just says it outright. They aren't worthless idiots like you. A bit harsh, but also they seem to have a playful relationship where they argue a lot, so it's not so bad. Otoshin even sticks his tongue out at the corporal until his colleague Momori points out that he might be onto something. He offers to kiss her for saying that, and she rewards him by saying, "Die." Momori explains that the fourth prince hasn't been doing much, even though it's clear Morena was taunting him. And she thinks the only reason for that could be that Sereidnik found a new toy. We get more insight into the fourth prince and how he tends to obsess over things until he's completely mastered them. Like in the 7th grade when he became the fastest gun assembling/disassembling person, beating out the military school's record. Things like that are what the prince calls playing. And in some ways, that sounds very much like how Meruem was insistent on beating Komugi, but sadly was never able to. A darker reveal is that the prince shot someone in the legs for arguing with him, of course waiting until after class. Otoshin seems annoyed at that childish behavior. Why is it okay to shoot someone who has a different view of things? Otoshin says the prince should use solid arguments instead of violence, but Momori points out that only he would be allowed to do that with the prince. That's an interesting comment, so there's a reason Otoshin uses a nickname for the prince then. Good to know. With all that, the corporal puts 2 and 2 together and realizes they're saying Sereidnik is too busy studying NEN right now to be bothered to hunt down Morena. Basically, he will only go for revenge once he feels he's mastered NEN usage, and if it were up to Theta, she would keep him busy for a long time. As the guards continue walking through the ship, they decide to wait for confirmation on whether the fourth prince is practicing NEN or not. Plus, they realize that Morena can likely use NEN abilities too. They also outshine the corporal by suggesting they request different deployments at times, because that way they could see when the mafia are doing cleanup, due to being blocked from certain spaces or passages. In other words, when the Mafia have something to hide, they won't agree to let royal guards pace around there. The corporal wonders why they haven't applied for better positions with their intelligence, like working with the prince, but they just all answer that it would be too much effort. Of course, he calls them slackers and admits he would like to move up, but maybe he doesn't have the brain like they do. A very internalized moment is triggered by the corporal's comment. Momori wonders if she should get promoted so she can encourage him to change. Another guard says it's in his nature and there's nothing they can do about it. The other girl admits she can't think of a way to help him if he doesn't want it himself. The last two, looking very defeated, think this is the best they can do for him, as people who've known him for so long. Otoshin adds, the closer you get, the less of a friend you become, which is why they want to create this distance so he knows they're not there to serve him, but instead to challenge him whenever possible. We get a brutal shot of Tsuraynik in his school days, and that infamous shooting another student because of an argument. But then we're back to this ragtag crew of friends, meeting up with Volk. She confirms to them that Theta is the one training the fourth prince in NEN abilities, but since everything is top secret, she doesn't have any other information to give them. But Otoshi notices that Volk has a strange look on her face, like she's ready to explode with anger. And when he asks, she tells him you betcha, with tiny, cranky octopuses floating around her. She's mad he told Corporal Gipper about all the NEN stuff going on, and also caused her to be transferred away from it. She also thinks she'll be used as an example of why it's not okay for higher and lower class soldiers to communicate, since they could be sharing sensitive info between each other. Accepting it, Volk admits Gipper won't get any information that he wants from Theta even if he tries, so it doesn't matter. As a friend, she can tell that Theta is also hiding certain things, or trying to keep others from knowing her goals, since Volk noticed her acting differently. She was hoping to keep asking questions and trying to decipher the hints, but now she can't since she's been transferred down. With that said, they all agree that it's time for them to avoid Morena like the plague, which is funny since she's planning to use an ability called Contagion after all. That aside, Volk is worried that their identities have been revealed, and if they ever come across Morena, they're dead meat. It doesn't help that the tattoo artist who figured out they were private soldiers was previously part of the Hylia family. The group still can't grasp how dangerous NEN is and how versatile it can be though. All Volk knows is that it's a weapon best kept secret. Atoshin chimes in, annoyed that he already explained that, but they didn't really believe him. One of the guards points out that they could also learn how to use it, since the prince is currently doing that. For survival reasons, it seems they want to figure out NEN, but can only do so with the help of the Cha-R and Chiyu families. The, frankly, more reasonable ones. With a serious look, Momori asks Volk if they need to cut ties with anyone who is caught by Morena, and the tightly knit group seems to look surprised. Instead of answering, they decide to try and find more ways to survive, and with a final text splash of "the way to survive is to think," the chapter is done. How was it trying to keep track of all these new Hylia members, and the politics that's getting even more complicated? Hopefully we can have some action next chapter to balance out all the information we just got. Who knows, maybe Prince Tsuraynik will be done training in NEN soon. Thanks for watching, I'm Jack Stansbury, and as always, have a great day.